Thank you very much from wherever you're joining us from the world. I am situated in Nairobi, Kenya. So it's a good morning to all of you from where you are at. All right. My name is Grace Wachori. I work at B East Africa. I am in charge of partnerships and engagement. I want to give a shout out to Trevor Combok. Trevor Combok is our communications coordinator here at B East Africa. Thank you so much, Trevor. He'll be helping me man the backside. So if you have any questions, any comments, please be sure to put them on the chat as we go on. Thank you very much. So I want to introduce our panel to you this morning. We have about an hour, 15 minutes to go, depending on how much conversation we have. And I want to bring us the panel. So we start with Matt Homewood. Matt Homewood is an independent independent consultant who is also a freelance expert working on free waste campaign, who is also a free waste campaigner. So Matt, welcome very much. In Nairobi would say Karibu. So Karibu, kindly tell us who you are and what you do.
Thanks a lot for that, Grace. Yes, I'm a food waste campaigner based in Denmark, in the capital, Copenhagen. I moved to this country to do a master's in climate change, and then I discovered the food waste problem. Yeah, so between a third and half of all food waste food is wasted on this planet. And so basically what I do is I go around supermarkets around the back to see what they're throwing out. And I take photos and videos of that and I share it on social media networks. And then from there, I explore the science of food loss and food waste across the globe, but especially focus on the global north where I'm based. And so today we've got a network of about 30,000 people across 3 networks: Instagram, Urban Harvester, that's the name of the platform, and LinkedIn and TikTok. And people find it fascinating to see what commercial entities waste, because actually it's a very different problem to consumer food waste, as we'll explore in the workshop. And so that's what I do. I dig really deep into food waste and explore the definitions and the challenges we face as a society.
Great. Thank you very much, Matt, and welcome once again. Our other panelist is Daniel Chege, who works at Synergy, I believe, I hope I pronounced that right, here in Nairobi. Welcome, Daniel, and tell us more about your company.
Hi everyone. I think the pronunciation is Synergy. Yeah, that happens a lot. So, as introduced, my name is Daniel Chege. I work for Synergy, lead the work on acquisition of feedstocks. And what Synergy does, it's a waste management company that applies circularity to deal with booming cities problems, which are mostly waste and sanitation waste. And we use that particular waste to feed back into the economy to solve other issues on the end. And this is a particular problem in terms of depleted soils affecting agriculture. So we use those problems to solve agricultural issues, animal health issues, and clean energy issues on the other end. So yeah, good to be here, everyone.
Thank you very much, Daniel. Next, we have Martha Naloiso. Martha Naloiso is a research executive at the Conservation and Ecosystem Health Alliance. Martha, welcome, and please tell us more about your company. Martha, you're still muted and we cannot hear
everyone.
Okay.
It's a bit chilly here in Uganda. Okay, Martha is my name. I'm from Uganda. I work with an NGO called Conservation and Ecosystem Health Alliance. This is based in the western part of the country. And here, basically, we are teaching farmers on how to restore their degraded habitats and well as provide seedlings to those farmers. And also I work with a project on project within the central part of the country called a University Project. And this project helps people within this area to utilize their food waste before it's being dumped to the nearby dumping site. And they make briquettes out of this. We sensitize them to make other things out of the waste that they get out of their homesteads. So that's me. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Martha. Next, we have Rita. I don't know if Rita is here. Rita Atuti from Shared Value. Rita. You're welcome, Rita. Go ahead. And we cannot hear you, Rita. Okay, that's okay. Okay.
Hey, hello, hi. Sorry, my name is Rita from Shared Value Foundation. It's been an honor to be in collaboration with B Lab to help put this together. So I'm happy to be here, and I'm glad to see our speakers, that is Matt, Daniel, and Martha. Welcome again, and grateful we're going to have an amazing session today.
Thank you very much, Rita. And thank you for joining and supporting the work that we have so far. So now I'm going to invite our panelists to just answer the first question that we're going to be focusing on today, and want to understand the essence of applying circular economy principles in managing food waste and how you have done that within your organization. Let's start with Daniel. Daniel?
Oh yeah, thanks. So I think what is important is the bigger problem is that organic waste, and in particular food waste, which is a composition of it, forms a very big part of what is produced in most cities. So I'll take in the context that we are working in Nairobi. Nairobi does produce about 3,000 tons on every single day, and 60% of it is organic waste. And now food waste does fit in there, although it's a smaller fraction compared to where we are, but all in all, organic waste does form a considerable amount of municipal solid waste. And what we've been able to do is create a facility and create a process and system that is able to turn that particular waste or that particular problem into a solution. And I think the easiest way we've been able to do that is identify some problems that do exist, especially in the Kenyan context. A food security problem, and how that is affecting, one, availability of food in the economy, and then you looking at the other end of it where you have a waste of food coming out, and taking that back into the economy as organic fertilizer to solve those problems that are affecting the food security issue. So yes, so we've been able to use that particular model, taking waste from the urban areas, putting it through a process and a system to give us organic fertilizer that has worked very well in Kenya. At least from what we've seen, it's improving up to 30% yields on farming, and that is indeed contributing to improving the food security issues that we have in the country. The second of all is a product that comes out of it is an animal protein. So of course, animals as well, feeding into the agricultural piece, do need some good proteins, and that's what we've been able to do. Is that waste, feed it to black soldier fly and be able to get an animal protein. Then we are also addressing another problem of animal health and trying to solve that problem using waste. The third and last one is that that particular waste is also converted into useful and clean energy biomass briquettes that are also feeding into the economy as a product of waste that initially would have gone to a landfill. So yes, small strides we're making. We're able to do about 300 tons in a day, which is more like a drop in the ocean compared to the 3,000 plus that Nairobi is generating. So yes, I think we are playing our part and small strides, but I'm sure we can do more as we handle this directly. Yeah.
Thank you, Daniel. It's interesting that you say how you get a waste, right? So a lot of us think because we live in the city and our municipal council helps us take this waste that is actually being taken care of. But we all know it ends up in a landfill somewhere. And thank you for creating that awareness that we need to move away from that and looking for options for us to be able to turn this waste into raw materials for other things so that we're able to upskill that and help drive this circular economy. Thank you. Martha, I'll pose the same question for you. How similar would it be, your company in Uganda or not, you know, to Synergy? And how does that look like in Uganda? Martha.
In Uganda, we mostly do the same with that is happening, but then we also sensitize the population on how this waste can be segregated, because most of them are not aware of what they can do with it. So we go around communities, sensitizing them on how to separate the waste from the decomposable one, without that and be able to be made to further use. And also we help the farmers. We have taught them skills on how to make worms out of the waste after decomposition. And this actually, we sell it to those farmers that are rearing catfish and other types of fish. So that's not going, that doesn't go to waste. And also we have also set up clubs using the influential people. Those are the local council members within each village who go on collecting the waste and also taking it to those farmers that have animals, for example, like the matoke peelings, the sweet potato peelings. We have the chairman help collect the waste from all those people and then so give it to those people who have animals in their livelihoods, in their homes. So that's what we are basically doing in regards to that.
Thank you, Martha. It's interesting to figure out how similar or not similar this is. Doing the same thing, there's an aspect there that we actually need to educate and do a lot of sensitization and awareness creation for our communities to know that there's a better way of getting rid of this waste, but also being able to actually involve that community. And I love what, Martha, you guys are doing by actually forming groups, forming clubs within the communities to be able to rally everyone that's in that environment to bring together this waste and be able to upscale it. What we shall do then is we get closer to the B Corp mission of being able to have sustainability in the end, right? So by generational teaching, we're able to create generations that create the sustainability for the circular economy. Thank you very much, Martha, for that. Now, Matt, how is this different or similar from where you're at in the global north?
Well, thank you, Daniel and Martha, for your insights. I mean, fascinating and inspiring to learn of your solutions, because here in the global north, I'm based in Scandinavia, which is probably one of the more progressive areas of the global north. Frankly, our waste management on the whole is quite embarrassing on a commercial level, because here in Copenhagen, I'm expected to fractionate my waste into 10 different fractions, but commercial entities here only separate into 2, organic waste and waste into incineration for the local publicly owned incineration plants that turn that into energy for these apartments and houses. The issue, though, is that the incineration costs are 50% lower than the organic waste. And so what happens, of course, commercial entities, just driven by cost, not rationality, they put it about 75% of their food waste into the incineration part, which is a great shame, because as you say, we're losing out on huge amounts of resources and circularity to bring those resources back to the farmers or to the animals, like in Uganda. So on the whole, much to do here in the global north, and we need legislation to fix these systemic issues. So kudos to you. And I'd be interested to hear, Daniel, what is limiting your company from increasing from that 300 tons a day to recapturing more of those 3,000?
Well, that's a good question. And just comparing what you mentioned about where you're from Denmark and what we have here, good thing is that you have legislation that is dealing with segregation at source. Now, you flip that around in Africa, we really don't have that. We don't have the legislation, we lack the education on what segregation really is and what the importance of segregation is. Without segregation, then you're not able to do or pull out the meaningful material to recover. So I think that is what we are trying to do. First of all, solve those policy issues, put those policies in place, And then I think we can be able to scale that up. Now, one of the challenges, the biggest challenges that we have is that we're not able to serve residential homes as part of what we do. We're able to serve, say, industries, because we are then able to very well train their people on and implement segregation means and segregation policies, do refresher courses, incentivize segregation, and then be able to pull that. So on the bigger picture of it, I think we started from the top going up, or from the bottom going up, which then is what the government is trying to do right now. It's stepped into the space, trying to bring up new legislation. So there's a new Waste Management Act that's come up, and it's mostly looking at industry and try to incentivize to segregate, which I hope in the very soon we'll be moving towards the bigger picture of the bigger population being incentivized to segregation.
Yeah, so it's very clear coming from that discussion. In the global north, there's already policy that's put in place. There's a huge focus to the personal, for lack of a better name, waste segmentation, right? But here in East Africa, here in Africa, it is really one for everyone. You have to look out for yourself and look out for your company. And it's become an innovative space where businesses are able to take up this waste and create, first of all, machineries and systems in how they can be able to pick up this waste and be able to use it for upscaling or even to get rid of it in the right way. Then there's another opportunity to be able to take commercial waste and segregate it and then use it for upscaling. So we can see how this is so different in the north, in the global north and the global south, but there's that opportunity that is driving innovation and therefore driving new businesses and new opportunities for Africans to really be able to create something out of their businesses. And we're excited that there's that new law. You know, it's better to have one step in the door, that new law that is going to be driving the change that we want to see, so that we can be able to hold each other accountable. But even on a second level, there's a commitment that we have to make as businesses, that we have to be interdependent of each other and hold each other accountable to be able to drive that. So we've started something that we call B Local. The B Local is a congregation of B Corps and non-B Corps in an area that will be driving this ideology. And one of the things that we're going to be pushing, which started last year, is really how do we get rid of our wastes? And that's the contribution that we would have in this region. So the next question, how are your businesses involved in adopting food circularity principles and business models to become more resilient over the long term? So you've told us how you're doing so far. So what are you doing to ensure that there is resiliency in the long term? Martha, let's start with you.
Thank you. What we're basically doing is creating focal persons that we are currently dealing with and the linkage between the project and the communities. Because once there's that gap, then things don't move. We have natives and of that community who are working closely with the local council members to move around the areas and make sure people adhere to what we tell them, and also to give them more of what we come up with, to give them more innovations that we come up with. We have also taught these people within, we have different cooking clubs within the area that are teaching people how to better utilize energy and stop wastage. Those cooking clubs are also, we have some small funding that we give to those people who are taking charge in the cooking clubs, that people are well that people are well versed with what we are doing. And whoever gets to learn of what we are doing also goes on to teach other people within the same community, so that we can ensure sustainability of what is going on. Thank you.
Thank you, Martha. I think there's a key point there that to ensure resilience, you have to involve all the stakeholders, right? And the stakeholders specifically here are the focal points that you're having with the natives of the community in these cooking clubs that are actually found in the local areas. You know, just to put in some Kiswahili slang there, we call them mashinani. Mashinani are the local areas. So getting representatives in the mashinani, getting representatives in these local areas that will drive these projects, these programs, so that we find resilience in the long run by having acceptability within the communities. That's absolutely amazing, Martha. Daniel, what are you doing in Nairobi to ensure resilience for your business model?
Oh, yeah. So I think we operate in a very informal sector, so to speak, or the change we're trying to make is mostly in the informal sector. So I think the most important thing is that we're always trying to improve our processes to be more dynamic to deal with the informality of it, or two, to try and involve government to help us in creating formality in that informal space. And then the most important thing is also capacity building within our own operators within those processes to be able to respond to any changes or be able to be dynamic enough to work in this kind of space. And the most important is innovation. So innovation is that every day we are trying to look at different ways of solving waste issues that are within the, the cities that we operate in. And without innovation, I think we will just be repeating the script and reading the same thing. So we're trying all the time to innovate and create new products, look at different ways of doing it. Of course, we're here all to learn and find new ways that could help us solve the problem quicker.
Go on mute, Grace.
Wow, I've been talking to myself. Thank you, Matt. I'm saying, Daniel, you raise an important point there where we're helping, where we would ask government to make things informal, the informality, because a lot of times you're dealing with populations that are in places where even access to some of these resources by government is very hard. So if you're able to actually make it quite informal, then it is reachable and it is attainable. We change the mindsets that it is out of reach or it's for a specific social class. So you're able to accept it and have that implementation of this business model from the ground up, really. You also talked about having capacity building for the people that are offering, and that ensures continuity and hopefully less retreat. That way you're able to take some resources with you and going, and a space for innovation. I like to say this, when you talk about BOP communities, right, the base of the pyramid communities, those are very different from the capital cities that we find in our East African cities, and also the very local areas. For example, Martha, you talked about having making briquettes. You'll find that in the BOP markets of the capital cities, they will not use briquettes. They actually use electricity and they use gas and they use electricity, but in the BOP communities of the very local areas, the rural areas, so to speak, they will actually be the ones who are using briquettes. So innovation is very paramount, because it is flexible according to where these communities are found. Even for the upper scale of communities, innovation it's not a one shoe fits all. Matt, I'll come to you and ask you, for the business models that you're seeing in the global north, what is it that you're doing or people are doing to be able to ensure that resilience over time? And then how different is it from what you're seeing here in East Africa?
Yeah, again, fascinating to learn all that. And I just see a question in the comments by Natalie Venus from Regeneration Mauritius, who points at the massive issue that is food loss at the farm level. And this is a key point, because here in the global north, we mostly have supermarkets or retailers selling. I think they have between 75 and 90% market share. So basically, the vast majority of the population spend almost all their money on food at these 5 or 6 companies in Denmark, or maybe a few more in France. And these are oligopolies, basically. They have huge power. The consumers have limited diversity. And then the farmers, of course, as Natalie points out, are hugely problematic, in big problem, because they only have 5 or 6 customers to sell to, and they're locked into these quite difficult contracts. So when a supermarket says, we want some potatoes, but we want them between this size and that size, what does that farmer do with all the produce that's smaller or above? And I'm sure Kenyan farmers who export to the global north also face these challenges. So in a way, these are wildly unresilient and inefficient systems. So that's why I try and communicate a lot of the alternative supply chains up here, because I think the supermarkets in the West actually cause a lot of power and cause a lot of problems. So yeah, at the moment, there's more problems than solutions, but the solutions are coming ever more quickly. And obviously the digital solutions enable new solutions to come ever more quickly.
Absolutely, Matt. And I think from your comments or the question that was raised by Natalie, a huge focus comes on the value chain of this food production, right? So here in East Africa, we're finding that we're at the beginning of that value chain, working with the farmers to ensure that they're having the produce sold and in a timely manner, and also at a fair price point, right? And then the supermarkets in the north, and let's be fair, only the very good product is sold to the north, the global north. And then here we are left out with the product that is less superior. And then what do we do with that? So you find that the farmers have to sell it at a throwaway price to get it off their hands. And if it doesn't get to the supermarket in time, then you lose these products. And really what we see that should be happening more is being able to cater for communities that are less fortunate, to be able to provide that for them as food. I lived in the US a while back, and when I was living there, what the supermarkets would do, they would have a fund drive through a church or something, some charitable cause, and they would be able to give these perishable foods to the people who are living in less, in the BOP areas, really less fortunate areas. And here we see street children being a lot of recipients from the food in the supermarkets that will be out here. But that is a good deal. But we're also seeing value addition. For example, we have a B Corp that's coming up. They call Nature Lock, and what they do is they dry up overripe mangoes. So if you have food that is getting to a place that is going to get perished, we are doing a bit of value addition where we are able to dry it out and package it and sell it as dried fruit. We're also seeing that a lot with, especially in the agriculture space, pumpkins, with fruits, with legumes and the like. So there's an opportunity there, like we had said, for innovation, to think clearly, how are we able to extend the life of this food and reduce that wastage? But it needs a lot of capital to do that. You need a lot of machinery. It's interesting that Nature Lock that do this, there's a whole, I understand there's a whole waiting line at the government institution where they have the drying machinery, and you can go to book some time to do that, and the queue is months out. So we don't have this machinery that we need to do this. So the ideas are great. Maybe even the infrastructure is there, but we don't have capital to be able to raise this. And therefore, aside from policy, aside from the awareness, we're finding that we also need to be able to create these points in the local communities where it's accessible to these farmers and these businesses that actually need this. All right. Now, for each of your companies represented here, Synergy and Nature Conservative, what is your story about how you introduced your circular principles? What was your vision and your approach, and any challenges that you encountered while doing this and that you still encounter? Daniel, let's start with you.
Yeah, I think the vision, it all started as working in the informal space to provide sanitation solutions where there was no sanitation solutions. And that piece has continued very well by at least offering people decent toilets, so to speak, and we are able to solve that issue. And so what we were left with was, okay, what do we do with the waste that comes out of it? Because it's all container-based and it's not using any sewers. And then that's why we ended up now thinking of a solution and trying to solve that solution in the informal settlement. There was all this waste flowing down all the way from the affluent neighborhoods, and it ended up in the slums. And we had to think, okay, so we're solving one problem here. We have been able to solve a problem. We have a waste with us. What do we do? So yeah, that's where we ended up now thinking, okay, we can solve this problem on a bigger scale. And that's where we ended up now creating the factory that we have. So last year, Q4, we opened up the largest organic waste recycling facility in sub-Saharan Africa. That is a 300 facility, which at the moment we are trying to scale that particular facility. So we use biological processes to treat the waste. And in that, there is a lot of, so what you're able to control and what you're not able. So for us, I think the challenge is always trying to innovate and trying to hit our capacities and trying to create a bigger impact through what we have right now and through that facility. So yeah, I guess that in a nutshell, that would be our journey.
Okay, and thank you for taking us through that, seeing how food waste is traveling from the affluent areas to the less affluent areas. And I think that's a problem of every market and every region across the world, really. And the peculiarness, congratulations on having that plant to being the biggest in East Africa. But talk to us a bit more about the challenges, if any, that you have experienced through this process.
Yeah, the challenges, other than just what I I mentioned, I think some of them is one, legislation has always been the biggest problem, where we have to go looking for this waste. So ideally, with the capacity that we have to treat, we would be good enough to just sit and wait for the waste to come to us through, say, waste collectors, and they bring the waste to us for treatment. However, there is a gap in that particular process. So we have to go up and get that waste for ourselves. So that means we are having to split our capacities from just not treatment, but also build a logistical capacity to go get that waste. And then once we do that, it's then again trying to build capacity within that particular process. So yes, that is one particular big gap. And as I say, government is trying to come up with some policies to at least have companies that are even collecting waste thinking not just collecting and dumping in a landfill, but trying to incentivize and bring about one, how do they play their part in the segregation process? How do they drive their part in ensuring the waste collected remains segregated? Because that's what you notice, that people, even certain organizations that try to segregate, once it's being collected, it's all put back together. So more like just sorting and throwing all that went into it. Yeah, so, and then after that, some of the biggest challenges too have been trying to bring formality into the informal sector, into that informal sector. So we serve a couple of markets within Nairobi. So what we're trying to solve within that is trying to consolidate the organic waste that is generated by markets. And we use waste pickers to consolidate that. So trying to bring them into a formal where they're able to consolidate the waste that is required and separate it, and then try to collect that as well. Yeah, so, and then the last one is, I think in terms of building your own capacities, everything that we live through from high power is always a big problem affecting your production processes. But yes, I think all in all, we've made some strides, and every day trying to engage government to make this a more conducive environment for all to thrive in and at least have that impact felt more meaningful.
Thank you, Daniel. When you talk about power, you know, living in the global south is very easy, funny. Power couldn't be gone in any second. It's gone, and there's no telling when it's gonna be back. And can you imagine that happening when in the middle of processing all this? And if you don't have any backup for that, that just means you sit still and wait until power comes back. So that's a real issue, really. To be in this market, you have to plan at least plan B, plan C, generators, you know, solar, and we encourage to go solar. But it's also very expensive. You know, fast. The beginning of it is very capital intensive, and therefore it becomes a challenge for a lot of businesses to do that. You also talk about capacity in itself. If you're having to actually go out and look for this waste yourself, then you're having to employ people with different capabilities or taking them away from their work. And we hear people saying who are employed that I'm being pulled from all directions, right? And that's not what it sounds like. That I have on your job description, there's the other, and that other is really pulling, and having that capacity to streamline it is really hard, which goes back to the initial point we had said, that we need to create a lot of awareness that this is happening in our markets. And I think Daniel is B Lab here. We will help you do that for sure, to be able to put this word out within the communities that we work with. Martha, how is this different or the same for you? The history of you coming up and the challenges that you have actually gone through.
Thank you. The history is mostly the same. The area where we're working is an area near the market, the biggest market within Kampala. So meaning there's a lot of food waste within that area, and the nearest landfill is almost getting filled up. So we felt the need to teach these communities within this area about making use of the food waste. But then most of the people within this area are tenants, meaning you have to continually come up and teach the locals who have then come into an area about the same. And also the mindset change is still a challenge. People are used to the ordinary ways of doing the things, but then changing their mindset that this can be made to a proper use is still a challenge. But more so or less, we are now managing. People are getting more knowledgeable about how to make use of the waste that they have. Some have even come up with smaller gardens in their area, that those other vegetables that can be cultivated around their homesteads, and those are using the manure from decomposing the waste from the manure from the foods that they eat is also picking up within this area. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Martha. And I like what you say about the mindset, right? It all starts with the mindset. And to just piggyback on what Martha has put here in the chat, we need to think about the holistic approach, empowering businesses, empowering farmers to think about the whole value chain, really. And if they don't have one option that works for them, what other option is there? So we don't get supermarkets to actually be able to buy this, then what can they do for themselves, right? They can make smoothies, they can turn the peels in compost, they can actually, she talks about an NGO that is working in Mauritius to pick up this ugly bad fruit and turn it into juices. So by creating that empowerment, and by the workers, the farmers that you'll be working with, giving them a plan B, an option B. Actually, it's not really an option B, it's actually option A for that bad fruit. Then we are able to actually reduce that food waste, going back to creating a lot of alternatives for that and creating that knowledge. I also like your idea of the smaller gardens within the homes, right? So that we are able to reduce that waste that is going out, and being able to actually, if you're able to produce within our homes, then I think there'll be less waste, because then we would not be having all these farmers that are trying to get this waste within ourselves. Yes, maybe their profit margins will go down a bit, but it will reduce the food waste that we are seeing. Martha, and we love that. That's what you're doing. Could you probably tell us about some of the challenges that you faced as you started and as you continue with your business model? Did we lose you? Looks like you're frozen. Okay, I will come back to you. Are you back? Matt, how does this look like? When you've talked to different businesses, given that you're a consultant and you're working with different businesses, maybe give us an example of a few businesses on how they ended up at this circular economy approach, and what are some of the challenges that they say they are encountering in the global north?
Well, I think because we're talking so much about food waste, I think for many of our participants in sub-Saharan Africa, if they saw the state of these dumpsters, it'd be embarrassing and shocking to them, because when we talk about food waste, we think of a few rotten apples, a few rotten mangoes, but and the reason why I go to such great lengths to take these photos to spread this across the internet is that we're talking about perfect food often. And not only the fruit and vegetables, from a climate perspective, actually, these bins are full of pork and beef, which we know from a climate perspective is a disaster. And so what we see here in the north is that basically supermarkets are being greedy. They make big profits, and I'm not against profits, but the profits are too big, and basically they are keeping the prices too high on too many of their soon to be expired goods. Because in America, as you mentioned earlier, 1 in 7 people in that country are food insecure. And so there's a lot of people struggling to get by. And so if we could get better offers on that soon to be trash, that would be beneficial for everyone apart from supermarket shareholders and management. So I try and bring a critical analysis to it, because supermarkets often tell me, especially the CSR teams, we are trying to do all we can on food waste. Well, clearly not hard enough, because this is about a justice issue on a global scale. Because if the global north takes way too many resources on a daily basis, then of course that impacts global food prices, and that's completely unfair. For example, I get many South African blueberries that have been flown up here. I get South African followers messaging me, I can't even afford local blueberries anymore because it's too expensive. So that's what I try and bring. And to be honest, supermarkets have been quite reluctant to get to work to find solutions, because it means profit cuts. So that's a slight perspective on some of the issues we face on the food waste issue here in the global north.
Yeah, and I think that's very interesting that even buying food in supermarkets here in East Africa, let me talk about Nairobi, is a thing that has just happened in the last few years. We knew for you to buy food, you'd go to the market, the open market, and buy it from the ladies who have just bought it from the farm. And transitioning our mindsets to bring vegetables from the supermarket is actually a very foreign concept. And we talk about food going bad, we're thinking about the food being on a shelf somewhere, but we've seen mangoes going bad while they're actually on the tree itself. So there's so much more to think about than just overripe food, right? It's also how the production of this produce is coming through. By using the right compost, by actually using the right agricultural innovative, mechanisms that we need to do to be able to produce good fruit. That way we don't end up losing it even before it gets to market, right? So there's a whole consideration there from the value chain, empowering the farmers to use the right farming procedures. Then once it's out for them to have the key commercial channel that they need to send their products to, but also another plan for the overripe fruit, which is probably some kind of value addition and partnerships with organizations that will allow them to reduce this wastage. All right. Another question here is, what is the potential of the circular economy strategy for a green recovery post the pandemic? So, I mean, the pandemic has really showed us many cases and all the drawbacks of the present economic model, the linear economy, where we were taking, we take, we make, and we dispose. And we've seen that, is that valuable? What it is that we need to do differently? I mean, it's possible for the world to shut in a minute, right? So we had all these value chains going, we had all these new markets going, then all of a sudden the world is not working as such. There are all these markets that have been shut down. We have all this food. What do we do with it? And let's comment that in the context of that we are living in countries and in systems where policy is there, but it's not really well implemented. And so we have all these constraints around us. So what it is that we can do to ensure we have this even post the pandemic? I will start with you, Matt.
Yeah, it's a big question, but just to go back to your last point, I think one key thing is that, of course, food loss and food waste is a huge, it varies massively depending on where you are in the world. And of course, as you allude to, in sub-Saharan Africa, for example, sometimes farmers just have way too many fruit and vegetables and they need to process that. So, for example, the drying facilities are a fantastic opportunity to bring more profit to the farmers and reduce wastage considerably. Again, I try and bring, alternative thoughts. Do we in the global north need South African blueberries in a January? I'm not sure that's the case. And I know some South African blueberry farmers might miss out on things, but we also need to become a bit more rational in the way we live because life has become too convenient. And so it's a big question. I'm not sure how much I can bring, but certainly we need more resilient food systems. So, for example, I took the train across Denmark yesterday, and you take the train across this country, and all you see is monoculture crops.
Hi. How are you?
All you see is all you see is monoculture crops. And I think on this planet we've got about 20. I forget the stats, but anyway, what I mean is that we need more diversity on the field, and we probably need slightly more regional food systems so that prices don't go, prices don't impact the global south quite as much. And so there's a lot to do, but the food system needs massive reform, and the pandemic we saw is just evidence that those reforms need to come soon.
Great, thank you, Matt. And I think that's also personal responsibility, where as a consumer, you have to ask yourself, how am I utilizing, or what kind of products do I want to utilize? Are the products that are going to me in an ethical manner, in a way that actually helps me promote environmental friendly and beneficial, that is beneficial for the environment as well. Daniel, how do you see this happening here in Nairobi?
Look, I think what Matt said is very, very important. Things cannot be the same. Things cannot function the same way. Coronavirus, of course, was something nobody ever thought would happen in the world, and it has happened. And being able to change to that and adapt to that and realize that some of the things that we do have to change in a way is very, very important. And to me, I think the most important is the amount of there's a lot of wastage, at least at the farm levels, that post-harvest or just between harvest and market, that process right there before the food gets to the market, that wastage that is there, I think there's a lot of work that can be done to support the farmers, and not just through having to even upcycle that food as waste, calling it food at that point, because it is food and it is not waste per se. So yes, I do think we need to do a lot to try and change and be dynamic as the world has become. And I think it's about complacency. We've been doing this over and over, and we just have to think differently and be innovative in what we do. Yeah.
All right. Thank you for that, Daniel. I think I agree with you. We cannot do the same things the same way. And a good point is reason that we need to produce for our needs and not be extravagant, right? And if we are going to do that, then have mechanisms that will allow us to be able to preserve these products. Martha, how would you respond to this conversation, being from Ugandan point of view?
Thank you. I concur with the previous speakers. But then in Uganda, currently, we are actually under lockdown, a 42-day lockdown. This means that most of the produce from the villages are rotting from the gardens. And
Martha, I'm going to stop you. We can barely hear you. Maybe try putting your video off. Let's see if the voice will get better.
So this raises concern because most of the food is now being restricted. The work in the urban centers, we need to... Okay. Maybe I stop using headsets too, and I use we're actually under a 42-day lockdown. Hello.
Yes, Martha, we can hear you now. Go on.
Am I being heard? Okay.
And we lost you. We lost you. All right, we can come back to you. And as we come back to you, I think there's a nice point that there's a good question here that is raised by Shalk. I hope that's your name. I hope I pronounced it well. We would love to hear thoughts around government incentivizing supermarkets to issue food parcels to the homeless and not only utilize soon expiring stock, but also benefit from the grants, essentially reducing taxes. I'd have Daniel comment on that in Nairobi, given that
Thank you. I was saying, like in Uganda now, we are under a 42-day lockdown.
Then we lost her. Okay. Daniel, would you be able to comment on any government incentivizing parcels for supermarkets and the usage of food?
I'm losing you. I didn't hear that question completely. Can you just repeat, please?
Okay, so thoughts around government incentivizing supermarkets to issue food parcels to the homeless, not only utilize soon expiring stock, but also benefit from the grants, essentially something like reducing tax for these businesses.
Oh yeah, I think it's an interesting concept. We don't have, in the global south, I don't think we have a major problem, a serious problem of that. Because what I've seen with a lot of supermarkets here, other than say an international brand, is that somehow that food gets back into the supply chain. So one, I think the quality issue is we don't have a very strong process to ensure that whatever is termed as expired is not going back into the supply chain. And two, I've seen a process where anything that is expired is going back to the manufacturer. So the manufacturer is the one who deals with it. And these are the companies. And that's why now we have a waste management bill that can come and deal with that. So whenever they're collecting expired food, they're then forced by government to have a way of circularity around that waste. And that is not just ending up in a landfill. So what I've seen with, and I think a supermarket in particular, one here in Kenya, it's an international brand that we were talking to. And it is about what can they do to support, say, a CSR project, whatever they term as a one-day shelf food, which is, say, baked bread. It is one-day shelf food, but it doesn't have to be termed as waste. It can end up solving some food insecurity somewhere or helping out somebody who does not have a meal today. Yeah, and I think, yes, that would be something they would need to look at, because the issue with it is that they think that if it goes back to, they lack some kind of, it might end up in the market. So they lack some kind of traceability. That's a word. They lack traceability to ensure that it is going to the right way. But I think this can be done if they put the right processes in place.
Thank you, Daniel. But that's a great opportunity right there for government. But we are not as advanced yet. But that's a very good way to look at it and something that we can pitch too as well. I believe we have Martha back. Martha, you can go ahead. We're talking about, you can answer the question that you are trying to answer earlier. Martha? How do we remain resilient even post the pandemic?
Thank you. Sorry about that.
If you're talking, we cannot hear you. Unfortunately, it looks like the network is not.
Still saying, in Uganda, apparently we are under 42-day lockdown.
And we cannot hear you anymore.
Which means that most of the foods grown
Martha, we actually can't hear you. So go ahead and just write on the chat what you wanted to say, and then we'll come back to you. Thank you for all the comments on the chat. I see Shark saying return logistics is problematic to any supply chain, which might be a further incentive to produce and reduce and distribute near food waste at retail levels. And I think that's what we're talking about. Creating that awareness. So even if the food goes back to, all this food goes back to the manufacturer, or really the supplier who put them on the supermarket stalls, then they have opportunities and they have options on how they can actually be able to deal with this food issue than having it going to be waste. And there are a lot of ways to do that. And as we, as our small little silos, we know how that's working, but we need to amplify that and put it on a national scale where this is given as an option, and having a cultural mindset that overripe food is not bad food, right? Having a mindset that food that is about to expire is not expired. It can still be utilized and saved to do a lot of things. And once food goes bad, you don't have to actually really dump it in toilets or the like on latrines. You can actually change it in compost and bring back the glory. Remember when you're growing up, we worked in the farm and we would actually take this compost and put it in the manure, and we felt very good about ourselves. We need to bring that glory back of putting our hands to work and using that compost to actually help our soil become pH level, than getting this renewed fertilizers. Yes, someone will make a loss, but we need to use the resources that are available to us at this minimum area to create that production that we need and reducing our food waste. I'm just looking at the comments here, and we have someone called, there's a company there that says what they do is they deal with the malnutrition, the paradox of malnutrition and food loss. So kindly check them out. Farm to Feed, they have put in their website, farmtofeedkenya.com. They're asking if you're open to partnerships. They are more than willing to do that. Yes, we need to work together. Like I said, interdependence is a spirit. One business cannot get to a place where we gain food security working by ourselves. So we need to band together, create this awareness, and create this organization that we need. Natalie has also shared her organization website, regeneration.mu. Kindly hook her up. All right. So following this conversation today, I see we are 5 minutes to 9. What we're going to do is we're going to open a working group, and all these businesses that are represented here today, we want to see how we can be able to work together and really amplify this voice, be able to market what you're doing, but really create a mindset shift, create a cultural shift for us here in Africa, and on how we can be able to eliminate food waste one step at a time. Hopefully one day we'll be able to influence policy, but we start one day at a time. How can we influence each other? How can we influence the communities where we are working in, the customers that we are serving? How can we be able to educate them and create these opportunities and give them options that they do not have on how to reduce this waste? So Martha says, with a 42-day lock in Uganda, most of the foods grown in the rural areas are not brought to the cities areas. And that means there's overproduction in the rural areas and probably underproduction in the urban areas. And that value chain is all messed up. So how do we ensure that they are in the rural areas, they're able to confront this issue of overproduction in a way that reduces home waste? I think is a challenge that they are facing in Uganda right now post the pandemic. And I feel I should say this, when you talk about post-pandemic, it feels like in the global north, it's actually post, life could be almost back to normal. But here in Africa, there's still countries like Uganda, which are under clear lockdown. And we're at different stages. So moving with that is very different. In Kenya, we are starting to get back to a place where business is operational, but we still have parts of Kenya where it's like in the West, where it's under complete lockdown. So the movements of goods and services past those areas in lockdown is hard. So what are the opportunities that we can have? And if anybody wants to contribute to that, I welcome you to chat, to just put your comment on the chat or to unmute yourself and just share as we come to the close of this. And I'll give our panelists here, Daniel and Matt, to just give us 1 minute of final remarks, and then we can close it up. Matt, let's start with you.
No, thank you so much for organizing this. And I think Daniel hit the nail on the head when he said that, you know, we need to change the way we think. Like, for example, in the global north, we produce so much meat, and we haven't talked about reforming these massive industrial meat operations that are a source of these zoono viruses. So we need to change things. And I'd just like to take this opportunity to thank you all for giving all your insights into wherever you are in Kenya and Uganda, and also Natalie in Mauritius, who's provided loads of great comments in the chat, as well as Shalk. So yeah, thank you for organizing this. I've learned a lot, and it's been brilliant to participate.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you very much for even giving us the view of the global north. We are very happy that you are able to join us. Daniel.
Oh, hi, thanks a lot, B Corp, for bringing us all together. I think, Matt, without a doubt, is just what I've been able to draw a parallel between what's happening in the global north and in global south, looking at, we are both trying to solve one problem, but we have different challenges. And what you have as a challenge is an opportunity for us, and what we have as an opportunity might be a challenge. So yeah, I think learning and getting to see these perspectives has been quite something for me. And naturally, I think with the ideas that you've put up there, quite interesting. And I think Kenya would benefit a lot with that, because for ourselves, we've not been able to solve anything that's coming from farms. That is still an area that is huge problems that are happening there. Things like tomatoes, a lot of it goes to waste in the farms, and any ideas to solve that, probably that can be very, very helpful to farmers. So yeah, B Corp, thank you very much. And it's been interesting interacting with you all.
Thank you, Daniel. Martha says mindset shift is very key. Some of the people need to be educated about the nutritional benefits of the foods that are within their range. Food taboos by some society also enhance food wastage. So there's a lot of not just awareness, but also education to be done on the nutritional benefits of the food that we find in our immediate surroundings, and breaking these stigmas that have always been around, and what is good even for the population's health, right? As we move on, how can we be able to transition our mindset from how we think about growing food, the choice of the foods that we grow, how to counter overproduction, how do we get to the market, different options there, and how do we influence policy that is going to guide how we finish that value chain. That brings us to the end of this session. Thank you so much, Natalie, Shak, and everybody else in the room for your contributions. Thank you to Daniel, Matt, and Martha for agreeing to be panelists on this. This was absolutely amazing. Thank you for opening up our minds to see that there's opportunities, right? There's opportunity for innovation. There's an opportunity to actually be food secure without wastage. And I applaud you all for just doing this. So look out for our emails. If you need to send us an email, Trevor was sure to put it, our email there on the chat, hello@b-lab.net. Sorry, hello@b-labafrica.net. kindly send us an email, but also look out for a newsletter that will be coming your way. And specifically following this, we're going to start a working group to see how we are going to be able to impact our society by creating awareness, by creating education, and also possible ways in how we can collaborate to eliminate this wastage. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day from wherever you've joined us across the world. Bye-bye for now. Bye-bye.